99% of children do not get enough fiber.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that fact, but it's
Yeah.
shocking and it saddens me because that just means they're not eating enough plants. So what are they eating?
Welcome to the Mastering Diabetes audio experience, where we'll teach you how to reverse insulin resistance, achieve your ideal body weight, gain energy, and get your best A1C following almost 100 years of evidence-based research.
We're on a bold mission to reverse insulin resistance in 1 million people. We're glad to have you joining us. Hey, Muzammil, it's great to have you on the show.
Hey, Ravi, super excited to be here.
So we first connected at some conferences in the past. I'm forgetting exactly which one. I think I've seen you at multiple.
It was the lifestyle medicine one in Orlando 2 years ago.
Okay. Perfect. And we've stayed in touch on Instagram. You produce great content there.
Thank you so much. It's kind of crazy because when we connected, I wasn't even doing anything on Instagram. I started producing content after that, but I had told you about my vision back then, and you were like, you should go ahead with it. And it's amazing now I've come so far, but I still remember.
You really have.
I remember that conversation, yeah.
It's good stuff, and I cannot recommend that your account enough. You really put a lot of time and thought into these posts. Like, they're evidence-based, science-backed. Even it's kind of fun to see how social media has evolved. Like TikTok videos, the ones that you're creating and a lot of other great, professionals, healthcare professionals out there are actually quite educational, lead to research and having people actually learn important information.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of potential if you're able to put that research into very easy way of delivering that message. A lot of people can benefit from it because people don't know how to read scientific articles. There's a lot of jargon. And if we can just simplify that and make it fun, it's going to get people more interested in nutrition and eating healthier.
Absolutely. And a lot of the scientists who are conducting this research don't know how to get this important information out to more people. So people like you who are doing that, and again, making it understandable, it's really important. So how did you get into all this in the first place?
That's a good question. So I guess it depends on what you're asking, but because I'm just trying to see the best way of answering this. So I always cared about my health for a very long time, but I was uneducated on the topic, to be completely honest. It's not that what I was doing I thought was the right thing, was the best way of doing things. There were a lot of experiments involved before looking into the scientific literature. I've been interested in fitness for a very long time and nutrition because I was kind of overweight growing up for a very long time, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. But also, there's a lot of disease in my family. Cancer is very common. I have lost very young people my age with cancer. So I always wondered, I'm like, there has to be some sort of connection with the way we live. I didn't know much. It was more of intuition. And I never looked into the science at the time. And I was just like, I'm going to work out, I'm going to eat healthy, and I'm going to try to take care of my body. And I was doing that for a very long time. And yet I just still like, okay, sure, I was able to build muscle mass, but I never felt amazing like the way I wanted, the way I had envisioned. I had migraines all my life, just something I had been told to accept, something I had been told is genetics, and that I need to take medications. I had really bad cystic acne all my life. For a very long time, I had constant fatigue syndrome. At a very young age, I always just felt fatigued. I needed so much coffee all the time, and I just would not feel, I could sleep as much as I wanted, and the next day I just never felt amazing. And whenever I worked out, which I love doing, I just felt extremely sore and not good to work out the next day. And I had accepted that that's how it was. You have to take days off. Your body's not capable of handling more than that. And I just accepted that. It came to a point that it just started bothering me. And when I came into med school, I was like hoping, yes, I'm in med school. I'm going to learn a lot of this stuff and I'm going to fix myself. And as soon as I realized that was never going to happen because they were not teaching me that. They were teaching me exactly what the doctors were telling me, that a lot of this is genetics, or We don't know. They often just say they don't know what's causing it, but they will teach like a lot of medications and like pharmaceutical options, surgical options for a variety of diseases, and the conversation kind of ends there. My breaking point was this cardiology lecture. This cardiologist was talking about heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and goes, children by the age of 10 get plaques in their arteries. Okay, I was like, wow, okay. I was hoping they would explain why that is. Is it normal? Is this like a specific problem to Canada, US, or is it all over the world? Nothing. Just a matter of fact statement. Moved on. Then he goes, look at the person to your right, look at the person to your left. You have looked at two people. One of them is going to get heart disease. And again, nothing about, is it normal? Can we prevent this? Like give me any information. Can we cure this? Can we reverse it? Can we prevent it? Nothing. He just said 50% of the population gets heart disease. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this information? He just jumped into pharmaceutical and surgical options. That was my breaking point, because I was like, this does not seem right. None of this seems right. There has to be more. I just could not accept the fact that our bodies were meant to be broken for medical professionals and health professionals to come in and do something to fix it all the time. It just did not make sense to me. And I was like, there has to be more. There has to be more. So it was like a combination of my own health problems as well as like my frustration with medical school. So I decided to take a deep dive into scientific literature, nutritional literature. And what I found was so contradictory to what I thought. I was, at the time, I had done a lot of different diets because I never looked into the science until that point. I was just like, I would see something, I would follow it, experiment, and then I would follow something else. And then when I looked at the scientific literature, I saw a lot of consistency. I thought there was a lot of confusion in nutrition, but I saw a lot of consistency, and it was very opposite of what I thought it would be. One thing that I noticed was eating plants is something we all need to be doing, and a lot of it, and we're not doing enough of. Everyone seems to have a constipation problem, children especially. And I started looking at stats. 97% of adults don't get enough fiber in Canada. 99% of children do not get enough fiber. Wow. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that fact, but it's shocking, and it saddens me, because that just means they're not eating enough plants. So what are they eating?
I was aware of the fact about the 97%, but I have not heard that 99%.
Yeah, for children, it's shocking and it's saddening. And I was just like, okay, what am I going to do with this information, right? Something's definitely not right. So I started looking into like the longest living people around the world, like blue zones, and how they eat. Ended up coming across China's study, and it just kept piling on. And I realized, you know what? Yeah, I'm wrong about a lot of things. And I ate a very, very high protein diet. That was probably the reason I had so much inflammation in my body, and had those migraines, and had that constant fatigue syndrome, and a lot of whey protein. So that probably played a huge role in my cystic acne. So I realized I had to change everything. And this is before I discovered the environmental side, the ethical side. Right now, it was just purely health. And I decided I was gonna eat the way Okinawans eat the way Seventh-day Adventists eat, and things like that. And I decided to completely change my diet and shift towards eating plant-based diet. And honestly, Robbie, it was the most amazing thing for me was one day being like, I haven't had a migraine. What happened to my migraines? That was amazing. And honestly, since then, I have not had a single migraine. And I had these terrible migraines. I used to take so many medications for it. I've missed days of work because of it. And I've had this for a very long time, as long as I can remember. So the fact that I haven't had a single migraine, and we go and tell people diet plays no role, I'm just like, what are we doing?
I'm telling you, it's mind-boggling how often that way of thinking is still so ingrained in the medical system, in our healthcare system. It's just truly mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling, and there's a lot of it's unfortunate because there's a lot of this, like, if we're not taught this, it doesn't exist. And that's what keeps getting perpetuated, because then these people become residents, like medical students become residents, and they become staff, like attending, and to them it's like, if this information wasn't handed to me at med school in my residency, it probably doesn't exist. And I hear that so much, and I'm like,
right. So what you're saying is the students are under the belief that, look, I'm in medical school right now. I am getting taught all the best information, all the latest information. So if it wasn't taught to me, then there's no way that some other alternative could exist. Is that what you're saying?
Literally. And
right. So it's like, so if you say, hey, to your fellow students, guys, did you know that you can absolutely reverse type 2 diabetes in the vast majority of cases? You can absolutely reverse prediabetes. They're like, no, because they didn't teach us that in medical school. If that was true, they would have taught us. Correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Which is unfortunate, because then then this problem just perpetuates. And no one ever takes a deep dive to figure out, is there another solution? And I've had to tackle that scenario many times. But I try not to even use my story, because I know anecdotal experiences aren't strong enough when it comes to medical community. So good thing is we have so much scientific data. I don't even need to use my anecdotal story. We have enough data. What we need is that to be in the curriculum, that to be made available to people who are treating these patients with these diseases. That's what we need.
You're exactly right. So as a medical student, can you elaborate on how much nutrition education has been included in your curriculum, is in medical curriculums in general? Give us some insight.
Right. So it's variable. It depends school to school. There's no, like, I feel like they try at the top, they try to come up with, you need to be taught this much. However, because nutrition is not a priority, most schools don't follow that. And they teach as much as they can, or as much as they feel they can. So there's a lot of discrepancy on the amount, from one school to the other. And the other problem is a lot of the information that's taught tends to be outdated and inaccurate, because no one took the time to go back and look and update it. They do that with medications. As soon as a new medication comes out that's approved, it's in the curriculum. But when it comes to nutrition, none of these people are passionate enough to keep on top of it. We have been taught very interesting things. Like, we were taught that plant-based diets are not good for mental health. Vegans have more problems with depression, which I had to fight to get that removed from the lecture, which has been removed.
Well done.
Yeah, a lot of things have been removed. We were taught that.
How did that process go? Did you provide evidence to the professor?
Yeah, so one of the psychiatrists was teaching a lecture on depression, and it was like eating disorder, depression type of lecture, and I remember this slide coming up, a picture of this vegan guy, and I believe there was also a girl or something. And it said something around the lines of, if someone comes to you saying they're vegan, always be suspicious. There could be a darker side than wanting to protect animals, or something along the lines. And then he was talking about, like, a lot of people become vegan due to an eating disorder. But his delivery was so poor that a lot of people came out thinking that vegans tend to have eating disorder, when people with eating disorders just tend to go for restrictive diets. It can be vegan, it can be keto, it can be a variety of things. That's how it should have been taught. That wasn't how it was taught. And then he also said that vegans don't get enough zinc, don't get enough tryptophan, and that's why they're more likely to get depression. The reference he had used was a very poor reference. I read the study. It was just like terrible. And a couple other things like that. So what I did was I accumulated everything that was said in the lecture, and then I pulled out all the references that were used and what were the issues with those references, and then all the references to counteract that, and how He's using this one study. I have meta-analyses saying the opposite. I have the Dietitians of Canada position statement saying the opposite, that you can be plant-based and completely healthy and get all your nutrients. So I put all that together in a very, very long email. I sent it to him and CC'd both of the deans.
Well,
because I'm like,
and you succeeded.
And I'm like, he's gonna have to take me seriously if they're CC'd.
Yeah, I mean, give him credit for acknowledging your resources and looking into your research and making that change. That's fantastic.
There was a lot of back and forth that I'm skipping, but in the end, not only did he take that out, but we were also then able to get him to put in that eating plant-based actually can be beneficial for mental health. So
wow.
It's been flipped completely.
That is amazing. I mean, that's important work. I mean, it kind of gets me inspired and motivated. Like, hey, if we can really put some effort forth and present research, and you do it in a very respectful way, through all of your the work I've seen on your platforms and your podcast, you can change people's minds with the facts.
That's all you need, honestly. It's how you present it that's huge, because no one wants to feel disrespected. No one wants to feel that you're trying to just belittle them. But it is at the same time important to hold them accountable. If they're an educator, they're teaching something, they have to be held accountable. And
absolutely,
that's what I've been doing with a lot of things that were taught. And I counteracted a lot of points. And slowly we have been able to make a lot of changes within the medical curriculum. And that's how we were able to get funding to start the Plant-Based Nutrition Club, to just get people learning more about plant-based nutrition. We had Brenda Davis and Dr. Clapper give lectures for people through that club.
That is fantastic. That's wonderful. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about, from your perspective and your experience, why there is so much confusion in the world of nutrition? You looked at the research, you saw, hey, it's very clear that we should be eating more plants. What the heck is going on out there?
There are a variety of reasons. Media playing a huge role. Media loves controversy, right? They will never consistently say one message. It does not benefit them. So one day they'll, same magazine or same media outlet will put up this blast about vegan diets being really good for you. And 2 days later, they'll put this blast about you need some sort of animal product in your diet to protect yourself from whatever stroke or something else. And they love doing that because that's what gets people to pick up their magazine or to open up their website and whatnot. And unfortunately, a lot of social media influencers also like to do that. So that plays a huge role. The other thing is, doctors, like I was mentioning, are not taught a lot about the nutrition. There was a study done that looked at people, like general public, who do they look up to for nutrition? And majority said doctors. Doctors came up more than dietitians. And
wow.
And then it looked at how much do doctors know about nutrition? And it was the equivalent or around the same of general public. So it's problematic because people are looking at these people, putting them on a pedestal, but those people know the same amount as these people.
Right.
So that causes confusion because doctors will often give very generic advice saying eat healthy, eat everything in moderation. I am, because I'm doing my medical rotations, I see this all the time. These statements hold no value. It leads to zero change. And then doctors will say, I'm frustrated. I tried counseling, they didn't make any change. A lot of doctors have told me, good luck changing this patient's mind. And I would be like, give me 10 to 15 minutes. I would come out and the patient will be saying things like, I'm going to be eating beans and I think I'm going to reduce meat. And this guy was like, the doctor was like, how did you do that? I've been trying. And it's important.
This is a very important point, Muzammil, which is that at Mastering Diabetes, the work that we do is we communicate to our clients, we believe in you. You can do this. And doctors are like, I'm not going to tell my patients because they're not going to do it. So they don't even tell them. Give them the opportunity, provide them with resources, provide them with inspirational stories, and we can do this. And I think it's the same thing that comes along when people are talking about, it's so hard, it's too difficult. It's like, no, because you're putting that energy on them. You're communicating, I don't even think you're going to do it, but let me just tell you about it. That energy is not going to work either. Really show them, yes, you can do this.
Absolutely. And honestly, patients do, for the most part, want to learn. There's always that odd patient who might not be interested, and that's fine, you know. But whenever I've talked to patients, most of them have been like, I wish someone had told me this sooner. This guy cried. He was a bit older than me. No, I think he was 40. I'm 30. And he legit cried because he's like, I've been trying to take care of my body. He had a stroke. He's like, I've been trying to take care of my body. I exercise every day. I eat healthy based on the advice I've been given. And I'm trying to do everything. I sleep well. And he had a stroke to a point that his arm, he has a lot of weakness in it. And now that's going to impact his exercise and everything else. And I was talking to him and I was telling him some tips, and he literally cried. He's like, if I knew this before, I could have prevented this. Because everyone had told him to eat a lot of protein. And hence he ate a lot of meat.
And I don't think, a lot of the mainstream healthcare community gives people enough credit for how much effort they are putting in. They just aren't given the right information, and so their efforts don't really pay off.
Right. Absolutely. That's the unfortunate thing. And then I ended up educating the doctor afterwards on all of that. I ended up educating on the role of saturated diet with insulin resistance, a bunch of other things that I realized that if I don't tell him and I leave my rotation, he wants to give advice. I could tell this doctor wants to give advice. It's just he's not as educated on the topic. So once I told him, he was like, I'm going to use this. I wish I knew this because I've been practicing for 30 years and the advice I've been given has been just completely wrong because I can see that it's not doing any change. So I do think majority of doctors have the right intentions. They don't have the knowledge because it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't part of the curriculum. It wasn't part of the residency and they never got it.
Right. Okay, so you touched on this a little bit, but maybe you can share a little more and give us some examples. But what happens when you are interacting with other professionals, other medical students, and you're trying to teach them about, that preventative medicine and lifestyle medicine? Are they receptive? Are they just like, no way, I don't believe it?
So I have found that as my approach has changed, they have become more and more and more receptive. Initially, I was trying to figure this out as well, but I picked up on few things really quickly. No one likes to be disrespected. So even if you know more, never disrespect anyone, never belittle them. Always try to come from an angle that you're trying to help with a good intention. That is super important. So I always keep that in mind, and always have evidence to back up anything you're going to say. You say one wrong thing, and this person was already really skeptical, and they open their mind a little bit for you, and you over exaggerate it, and they look at the data and they're like, this is showing one thing, he was saying one thing, they're going to lose interest right away. They're going to think you're just making up things or you're overly exaggerating. Yeah. So it's really important that whatever you're going to say is backed up by some sort of scientific studies that you can share as soon as they ask. So that is super key. And compassion, honestly, a lot of people talk about compassion in regards to animals and things like that, but you have to show compassion when you're trying to deliver a message to other humans as well. And that's what I do. Whenever I'm sharing with them information, I keep that in mind, that one, they won't come around right away, most likely. And you just have to be patient, and you have to keep sharing the information with them. And I have noticed, by the end of my rotations so far, every doctor at the end, we get this evaluation by doctor. Every doctor has written that he was an educator, not just for the patients, but for me about nutrition.
That's
and
fantastic.
They have all come around to accept that nutrition plays a big role, and that they have started watching documentaries and reading books that I've recommended. So it's all about not giving up, being patient, and very, very respectful, and sticking to the evidence.
And you make a great point there about making sure to not overstate the evidence. And because if you do, then you're going to be written off. But the flip side is also true, which is that if you state the evidence correctly, you incentivize them to actually go and look at it, and they're like, okay, wow, what he said is actually true. Then you the strength of okay, wow, now I want to listen to more. What other research should I be reading? It opens up their mind. So you're exactly right about really being clear about what has been studied, what things are maybe speculation, what things we need more research on, but really being clear about that. So I think that's fantastic. So how can you and medical professionals and our younger generation of medical professionals, how can you help people living with diabetes?
I feel like it's so sad because it's so simple, but yet not given enough focus. Because when we learned about diabetes, we barely learned about nutrition within it. We should have had a nutrition lecture, because diabetes, that's like, I'm talking about type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance, that can come with type 1 and type 2, is actually not that complicated once you get it. And unfortunately, they just don't take a deep dive into it. So what we need more of is to understand the mechanism behind it, how it all works. Because when you're teaching a patient about that, you're not just giving some generic advices about food. You actually understand, like, I can picture it in my mind when I'm talking to a patient about insulin resistance, what's going on, and I can explain it to them, the entire mechanism of saturated fat and how that plays a role, and then they get it. And once they get it, they are more likely to follow it. If I was to just be like, hey, you should reduce saturated fat, it's been shown that it increases your risk, they will be like, okay, it's good to know. But if they really know the mechanism of it, and I always, with insulin resistant patients, like type 2 diabetes especially, but also type 1, I always take extra minutes. I don't care if the doctor is going to be like, why didn't you do this fast now? I'm like, this patient is going to benefit from this information so much. So I try to take that time and just tell them. And then I have recommended your guys' book to so many diabetic patients. And it's funny because one patient actually came to me and was like, oh, do you know, have you read this book? He asked me, have you read this book, Mastering Diabetes? What you're saying is very similar to that. Do you know Robbie? And I'm like, Robbie's one of my friends.
That's awesome. I love that. That's great to hear. The word's getting out.
Yeah. So he was even more comfortable. He said he wasn't sure about it because no doctor had agreed to it, what he was recommended, but he said now he's for sure going to follow it because it came. It's kind of unfortunate that they put anyone like medical doctors up on top, and until they get the approval of that, they're not willing to listen, right? And so I was just glad, even though I'm not a doctor, he knows I'm a medical student, he still took that as an approval to start following what you guys are preaching. So I think, going back to answer your question, just taking those few minutes to educating, and I try to educate all the doctors I come across as much as I can, so then they can educate the patients.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think oftentimes the medical doctors can underestimate how much information their patients can learn. And I mean, that's one of our favorite things when we're doing our webinars and presenting information or at retreats or any situation, is when you teach and you give them like the framework, they're like, yes, like I get it now. And when you have that knowledge, it then influences your decision-making process because you actually can see what's going on in your body and understand, oh, hey, you know what? The reason my fasting blood glucose is high right now is because I had some high-fat food recently. And they can understand what's going on that impacts their decision-making. So that education component is so important. And I'm glad you're doing that. You're getting it to not just the patients, but also your fellow medical professionals. So that's huge.
Yeah, no, it's been great, because then my goal is same thing. I'm like, these doctors, they're probably not going to go back to school to learn nutrition. So any seeds that I can, just keep, anything I can do, I just want to keep doing.
Yeah. Now, before we go today, we have to talk a little bit about fitness, because that's a big component of what you teach and your personal story being an example. So can you talk to us a little bit about, people, if you're just, watching this or listening to this on the podcast, like you're not seeing it on YouTube, we'll probably insert a picture to show how fit Muzammil is. But like, you're a perfect example that you can build muscle, you can maintain muscle with plants. So give us some insight into your journey and maybe break some of the myths about protein,
Absolutely. I love it. There's this general perception that you need to be eating animal products to build muscle mass, or that if you try the other way, you need a lot of supplements. And none of that is true, because when it comes to your muscles, they don't care where your protein is coming from, one. And people don't realize that we don't actually even need as much as they think we need. So the first point, all your muscles or all your body cares about in regards to protein is getting its essential amino acids. A lot of people think that plant proteins are incomplete proteins, and that myth has been debunked by science decades ago, a long time ago. The only true incomplete protein is gelatin, which is an animal product. All the essential amino acids are found in plants. Yes, different plants have varying amounts of different essential amino acids in different quantities, but that is no different than different food products having different amounts of vitamins and minerals. You don't try to get all your vitamin C from one food and all your zinc from one food and all your iron from one food. You eat variety of foods and you get them in different amounts, and your body accumulates them, stores them, uses them as needed. It's no different when it comes to essential amino acids. Your body's smart. It stores whatever is needed. It uses, it recycles, it reuses, whatever it is required. So you don't need to worry about complete protein, incomplete protein. You don't need to worry about combining meals or any of that. Just know that all the protein initially comes from plants. That's how animals got it. So by skipping the animal portion, you're skipping so many other things like saturated fat and things like that. And then the second point being, people are over consuming on protein. The general public is eating way more protein than it needs. There was a study done that found that people are eating 2 to 3 times the protein that they need, and vegans even were eating, I believe, more than 70% of the protein they need. Everyone's over consuming on protein. When you are just living a healthy life, you don't really care about building too much muscle mass. You're active, but you're living a normal life. You only need about 0.8 grams per kilogram, and that by many scientists have been said that might be higher than what you actually need, because some blue zones don't even consume that much, and they're still living long without disease. But even if you were to aim for that, you still don't need to worry about it. If you're eating a variety of foods, you'd be able to get sufficient. If you're trying to build muscle mass, the amount you need is still a lot less than what people think. People are eating 2 to 3 times their body weight in pounds. I don't even know how they do that. What you truly need when it comes to, so there was a meta-analysis done that looked at how much protein you need for athletes. What they found was for endurance athletes, it kind of maxed out at 1.2 to 1.4 grams per kilograms. And when it came to bodybuilding, it maxed out at 1.6. No benefit was found past the 1.6 grams per kilogram point. There was a range from like 1.0, 1.2 to 1.6. And the reason there's a range is because it depends on your body, it depends on the exercise you're doing, the intensity, the frequency, hence the range. So you can kind of figure out what's best for you, but anything beyond 1.6 you really don't need. And when you go over it, you are sacrificing on other foods. People don't realize that they're like, oh, I'll take the extra protein to be safe. Okay, but what about the safety in regards to other nutrients, in regards to fiber, in regards to antioxidants, minerals, vitamins, things like that? You're sacrificing something. So there's no need to go over that. Meta-analysis that was done showed that. And when it comes to muscle building, I have found going plant-based, and there's research to back this up, my recovery has gone, it's so much better. The next day, I'm not sore, I'm energetic, I'm good to go back in the gym because all the inflammation caused by animal products has gone down. Now, I'm not eating as many inflammatory foods, and I'm eating a lot of foods that are anti-inflammatory. All plant foods have a lot of antioxidants. So my body's just fighting any inflammation that exercise causes. It's been an amazing experience. So 1, you don't need animal products. 2, you don't need as much protein as you think. And 3, your recovery time tremendously improves when you're eating plants.
That was a great point about how when you're focusing on getting more protein, particularly from animal-based foods, you are sacrificing nutrition in other foods. Oh, that I have an insurance policy if I have extra protein, but they're not thinking of what they're missing. That's a great point. Great point. Muzammil, thank you so much for joining us. You are a great example of a person who's really, again, working and teaching from the research, and you lead by example. And I think that's just a huge, huge benefit to what you're doing and how your patients are going to respond, because you look the part, you do it, you can teach them how to do it. So thank you for everything you're doing, and I wish you continued success. And I know you have a lot of exciting projects, so everybody make sure to go follow Muzammil on Instagram. There'll be a link below this show wherever you're watching it to catch the Instagram, catch the website, and stay tuned for exciting things.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rafi, for having me. This was great, great chat.